Welcome aboard. My name is actually Denise Vanaria, and I'm a Titanic historian. I also had family on board Titanic, so I have some close ties with the story. But today I'm going to tell you the story through the eyes of Mrs. Helen Andrews, wife of Titanic's designer, Thomas Andrews, Jr. Cable for White Star Line President Bruce Ismay on aboard the rescue ship Carpathia. April 19th, 1912. Interview Titanic's officers, all unanimous of Andrews, heroic unto death, thinking only of the safety of others. Extend heartfelt sympathy to all. April 19th, Mr. Ismay, have received names of about 200 survivors from Titanic. So far, my friend Andrews not included. Much fear his sense of duty was so great that there is scarcely any hope of his having been saved. Ismay. Perhaps everyone here would like to join me in a happier time in my life, and if you would all, as I regress. My name is Helen Riley Barber Andrews. I was born April 10th, 1881, Leamington Spa, Warwickshire, England. I am the youngest of 6 children. My mother, being quite a society lady, she insisted that I be molded in her image. It seems that she did not have much luck with my brothers and sisters, so I was her last attempt to do that with society ladies. We have a wonderful, wonderful home, Conway House. And my favorite part of the house is the gardens. And there, my father, John, he made something so wonderful for me. I remember he came up to me one day, and of course, my nickname is also Nellie. He'd call me Nellie. And he would say, Nellie, I had made something for you, and it was out in the gardens. And I wondered, well, thinking more plants or something. But actually, he said he had made me a rock garden. Now I'm thinking, even as a young girl, I'm thinking, oh, how interesting could that be, a rock garden? But as he walked me up to the rock garden, he said, just look, as we're coming up to the garden, he says, use your imagination, Nellie. And he said, just imagine, maybe they look like tall skyscrapers, maybe it looks like a city. It could be anything you wish. And my father always inspired me to have a great imagination. And he always said to me, it did not matter if you were male or female, that anyone can achieve anything they do so wish in life, so as long as their heart is in it and they believe in themselves. Well, as the years went by, I was anything but what mother would wish. I was more like a rebel, if you would like to know the truth, which you're going to find out. Well, mother insisted that all our ladies the ladies that help us. In fact, I always thought of them as my extended family, not as servants. Mother, of course, calls them her servants, the maids, the butlers, the footmen, the cooks, of course, but I always consider them my extended family. Well, mother said, Nellie, not to be sewing anything by hand. We have people here to do that, or I will send out to have your gowns made. But you're not to be doing any of that. But what did I like to do? I used to love to sneak up to the attics where all the ladies were working. And yes, I would sit with a needle and thread and work on all the beautiful garments, help them actually darn things. And then I had a lookout. One of the ladies would always tell me when mother was coming up the stairs. Then I disappeared down another stairs. That was the wonderful, wonderful thing about having all these servants' corridors. They're lots of fun, and you can hide behind walls, and nobody ever sees you moving about in the rooms. Well, as I grew and I became older, my father, he had become ill. And in 1901, I had lost him. And that was a great loss in my life. And of course, there I still had my mother, but I was never quite close with her. I always was with my father, and I believed in everything that he taught me and all that we worked together. I never forgot all the things and he told me about believing in myself, and anyone can achieve anything that they so wish as long as they put their heart and soul into it. So when my father passed away, I was about 20 years of age, and I had started to like ladies, you know, of course, about 18 to 20, we have our coming out parties, right? Well, I don't insist upon that. My mother does, but then we were able to travel. Of course, if you're going to travel, you have to have a maid or you have to have a chaperone with you, right? Well, I remember being on one vessel called the Lucania. And when I was on there, of course, Mother told me before I left, before we took voyage, because we liked to travel quite a bit, she said, you're never to be without the maid. You're never to be without the chaperone. It would not be very ladylike. Okay. Well, I decided to go roam the corridors of the ship. And there, running about, oh, ladies, I saw a most handsome gentleman. Yes, I did. His name was Thomas Andrews. And I just took notice of how tall he was. You see, when he would go in and out of the doorways, I noticed he was taking notes aboard the ship, and I was quite interested in what he was doing. And he would go in and out of the doorways, and he'd have to duck. That's how tall he was, and also quite handsome. Yes, I managed to get away from my chaperone. Well, over the years, Thomas and I became quite close. But ladies, as you know, we can't just put all our sights on one gentleman, right? The rebel I am, right? We have to have other prospects open for ourselves, correct? We're not taken yet, right? We're not married. We're not engaged to be married. So we must leave our prospects open. Well, I also became quite friendly with another gentleman who was, I found out later, both Thomas Andrews and he are shipwrights, and his name was Henry Harlan. Well, they both turned out to be very close friends. Yes. And I was spending time with both gentlemen. And finally, Mother came to me and she said, Nellie, you're making a mockery of me in my parties, in societies, and I'm being left out. Nobody's inviting me. And she told me, you have to decide which gentleman will court you. And she said, until you make a decision, I'm going to lock you upstairs in the house. She did, honestly, 2 weeks, honestly, till I decided. Well, it was Thomas Andrews, of course. Well, Mother still was not too happy I suppose she wouldn't be happy with either of my choices. And she insisted on giving Mr. Andrews quite a hard time. And before he would come, to visit, he would let her know that he's coming. Big mistake. Don't let Mother know you're coming to call. Oh, no, no, no. She would leave him in the vestibule downstairs, and she'd leave him to sit there. And many a times I didn't even know he was there. And then finally, one time I had found out that we had seen each other in town, and he said, all my calling cards had been returned to my mother. And I hadn't seen any of these calling cards. Ladies, I'm sure you each have your own calling cards from all your gentlemen suitors, correct? Right? Right? You would have received them, right? So your maid or your mother or your sister, somebody would have given them to you. Well, I had not seen not one of these. It seems Mother collected all his calling cards and sent them back to his mother. Oh, Mother, yes. Well, as time was going by, we became quite close. And I remember the trips along Strangford Lough, and we'd drive in the motor car, and he'd be next to me, and he's driving, I'd be looking at his strong arms, and I was just so very much in love with him. And my love grew much, much more the more he told me about his work. And he worked at Harlan and Wolff Shipyard. And it was quite interesting about his life at the shipyard. He started from a very young gentleman. He was just a lad when he started there. In fact, I have a photograph there of him along with his other apprentices. He started at the age of 16. and then he worked his way up. Oh, and I suppose you're probably wondering, because his uncle, William Peary, runs the yard, and I'm sure you're thinking he gets special favor, right? Well, I see a gentleman there that he works at the yard. Are you wondering about that? Yes, you're wondering if Thomas gets favor, correct? He does not. In fact, he works just as hard, if not harder, than all of the men in the yard. In fact, I was telling this lovely lady just earlier today that when there is something that has to be done at the yard that needs some help, he's right out there. Rain, sunshine, snow, he's out there working with the other workers. So he has no special favor, nor would he want it there at the yard. Well, during our courtship, I should like to read you something that he sent to me. And it's only water, it's not wine. Need not tell mother. And this was written on March 25th, 1905, and this was during our courtship. Had I for one moment thought we did not understand each other all these years since we first met, and that you did not love me as I felt sure, and was led to believe you did by both you and my friends and relations, I would never have placed you in such an awkward position as I did. I hope that you will still accept my offer, as it would have been awful to have been refused by the one I love so much. Please reconsider my offer. You are my ideal dream. I am not disappointed or annoyed by your refusal to answer my proposal, for I am alone to blame for putting you in that position. God bless you, dear, and don't do anything that you think your mother, sister, brothers, or friends would not approve of. Otherwise, I could never look them straight in the face again. Your ever affectionate and loving friend, Thomas Andrews, Jr. Well, I must be honest about something here. Well, of course, ladies, we cannot show that we are too ready to accept proposal, correct? So let's see. He proposed to me once, I think twice. Yes, actually 3 times, because he complained about it every time. Oh, actually, I think it was 4 times he proposed to me, and then finally I said yes. So, but yes, and we were finally married in June of 1908 at Conway House, Mother's house. And of course, ladies and gentlemen, you're probably wondering, did Mother have a hand in the wedding? Yes, she did. Yes, she did. It was a wonderful, wonderful setting, I must admit. Mother did a wonderful job. When we came back from Lambay Parish, when we came home, she had all the chairs set up, and she had bows, pretty white silk bows on all the chairs for all the people attending. It was lovely, absolutely lovely. And of course, to be at the Conway House and have on the paneled walls, have all my late father's trophies and his awards. I felt like Father was there with me. So it was a wonderful, wonderful memory. Well, at the end of the wedding, at the end of the reception, my attendants, they all had canes, and all their canes were adorned with sprigs of sweet pea, white and blue ribbon, and I thought that's what Mother had helped them with, besides the chairs and then the layout. But no, I come to find, ladies, you're going to be shocked. Gentlemen, you're going to be shaking your head. Guess who helped them to make those canes? Thomas. Yes, working with silk ribbon, ladies, and putting flowers on these canes for my ladies. And then as we left the reception, all the ladies made an archway with the canes, and we left through there. From there, we went to see the solicitor to have everything taken care of, and then we went on to have our wedding night at Uncle Peary's house. Well, ladies, I will tell you, it was a bit of a struggle. Yes, you see, he gave us one of the most beautiful rooms in the house for our wedding night. And I remember it had these tall windows, with these Gothic tall windows, beautiful. And you can look out and see everything out, and you see all the grounds. Well, I excused myself when we came into our room, and I needed some time to freshen myself up a bit. But ladies, I came back into my room, and what do I find? My husband is in his bed, true, and he has the covers pulled all the way up to his chin. And you're wondering, right? Well, I managed to get those covers off of him, and would you believe, yes, gentlemen, Mr. Andrews, he had his whole wedding clothes, all his suits still on. He was hiding away from me because he knows I like to chase him about. And I did all that whole night. I think I chased him about. He was so tired we had to continue the next day on the rest of our honeymoon. We had gone to Grenoble, and we had spent some time there, a beautiful hotel. And there was a beautiful town nearby called Tiermanfecken, and they had something amazing. My husband and I loved anything to do with Egypt and the pyramids. In fact, one of the wedding gifts we received was a book on the pyramids of Egypt. But what did we find? And I believe it was Tiermanfecken. There are these, I want to say, like pyramids, but they're these domes, but inside, and they're just as old as the pyramids, and not many people know about them. And inside, the corridors were just like that of the pharaohs in Egypt. So it's a very interesting place to be. Well, of course, ladies, once we had a wonderful, wonderful honeymoon, went on to Switzerland, brought back wonderful, wonderful gifts. In fact, my wedding platter is there. I brought it to show it to you. My wedding platter is in that case right there that you can see. In fact, Henry Harland, my other suitor, that was from him and his family when I got married to Thomas. And Henry still was very good friends with Thomas. All the three of us were sort of a team. We still managed to be a team. Although Henry went on to do shipwright work in China for some time. Well, when I came back from the honeymoon, of course, Thomas already had our house ready, Dunallen. He'd been living there for several months before we moved in. And he had it ready with all the ladies and all the servants, my extended family that I would need. And there I began to know the life of the wife of a naval architect. And I will say, I never once complained. He's a very, 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 very busy gentleman. And I noticed that I see some of the men here are from the shipyard. In fact, sir, you look like one of the gentlemen that he works with. And I must say, I am very appreciative of all the hard work each and every one of you do with my husband. Mr. O'Brien, you look very much, that is you. Is that correct, Mr. O'Brien? Thank you for being here. Thank you. Well, all the gentlemen, they work so very hard. And my husband, in 1907, 1908, they had an idea. Now, Mr. O'Brien, you're aware of this. Of course, the world has been quite taken with the Cunard liners, the Lusitania and the Mauretania. And I'm sure my husband was talking to you and telling you that we wanted to do something to rival those liners. Therefore, they decided at a meeting at Lord Peary's that they would come out with 3 sister ships. As you know, Mr. O'Brien and the other gentlemen, the Olympic-class liners. Yes, sir, I remember you. I believe, sir, you were talking with my husband about the Olympic-class liners. And the first ship would be the Olympic, the second being Titanic, and the third would be Gigantic. 3 sisters. And once the work commenced on these 3 sisters, Mr. O'Brien, as you know, there was so much, and the men hardly ever went home. I think you maybe have 3 or 4 hours of sleep, and you had to be back the next day at the gate, so you didn't get locked out, correct? That's correct. Well, these men, I am so proud of them. They had a gantry come in, and they helped to build this gantry. And in this gantry would be Titanic and Olympic side by side, in this huge gantry. And the gantry, ma'am, I remember you were asking me earlier, and some of the ladies might not understand. What the gantry does is it's got all these different levels, so all the men, Mr. O'Brien and all the gentlemen, can go up on each level and work on the vessels as they grow from the keel plate up. Now, They start out, and at the bottom of the ship, of course, her backbone is called the keel. Okay. One of the things that my husband insisted upon was a double bottom. And the double bottom would ensure that the ship, for Olympic, for Titanic, for Gigantic, should the vessel run aground, many a times vessels have run aground in Newfoundland and also on icebergs, so or have touched or grazed. So my husband wanted the double bottom firstly. And so the men, they would come down and they would work and keep bringing things for the vessel, and they would build these ribs. Ladies, you must come to the yard sometime to see this. I've been so lucky that my husband takes me now and then in the evenings to take a look at how things are coming. The vessels, I do believe Olympic may be almost finished, and Titanic's being worked on right now presently as well. And the ribs, it starts all these bits of wood all on the bottom, and they make the shape, the bottom of the ship, the double bottom. And then the ribs, yes, they look like ribs coming up. They build the ribs and they start coming up from the keel plate. Now, as the men continue to work, it's amazing how you can watch one deck forming after the other. My husband he was asked to build these ships. They gave him specifications to follow. And my husband wanted double bottom, and he thought probably an inner skin, a double skin. Therefore, should she run into another, should a vessel come in contact, should she hit the side of a berg, something come in contact with the Titanic or the Olympic, the inner skin would keep her afloat. He thought that would be 16 watertight compartments. And how these will work is he thought to have them seal true. So if I say watertight compartments, they would seal true. And he wanted them to be, if the bow of the vessel were to hit something and the water would come in, the water would only fill up maybe the first one or two compartments, and they keep the vessel afloat, sort of like a lifeboat within herself. So while my husband was working all these wonderful ideas and all these safety precautions, and ladies, I assure you, all your husbands that are here, and Mr. O'Brien, I can assure you that he's working very hard on everything to make sure that every safety precaution is being adhered to before any of us or any of your men may be sailing on the vessels, to make sure that all is taken care of properly. Well, during the time now that all this has been happening, I had found out I was expecting our first child, a little girl. When she was born, I remember my husband, now ladies, you know, of course, when we are expecting, we are locked in the house for what, I believe it's 9 months beforehand, about 8 months. And then, of course, you are quite ready to be out and about once baby is born. Well, my husband thought it'd be better for my health that I be locked up for another 6 months afterwards. So if you haven't seen me out and about, just come by and I'll wave to you outside the window. I'm inside with the baby. But I do recall the morning that she was born, and the ladies, the servants, extended family, brought him up to the room. And when he sat on the bed and I placed her into his arms, to see the tears in his eyes, he was so proud. And her full name is Elizabeth Law Barber Andrews. My husband took the first letter of each of her names and he named her Elba. So that's what we call her, little baby Elba. So, ladies, if you wish to come by anytime and you want to say hello to me, I would really appreciate it, because I'm still not out and about quite much as all you ladies are. Well, as Elba was growing and more was happening at the yard, my husband was having a much more difficult time with the British Board of Trade. Another area that he ran into trouble with was these are going to be the biggest vessels ever. All right, these are going to rival, like I said, the Cunard vessels. These will carry, when full capacity, up to 3,200 people. Can you imagine? 3,200 people. That's a small city within itself. There'll be over 10 decks. Several nights before I had given birth to Elva, he had taken me in the evening to the yard for a bit of fresh air. And we looked up into the sky. Ladies, gentlemen, you remember Halley's Comet that went by recently, high in the sky? Well, I remember looking up at the vessels, and just that wall of steel went up, just seemed to never end. Over 10 decks. Can you imagine? 3,200 people when filled to full capacity. Well, my husband proposes, and he did propose, that there be at least 64, forgive me if I'm in the way of anything, there be at least 64 lifeboats. And with these 64 lifeboats, there would be enough for everyone on board. Now, he tested the lifeboats in Belfast with the weight of 70 men, overloading them to make sure they could handle the weight load, and they could. But then Mr. Ismay and the British Board of Trade started arguing that to have this many boats, lifeboats on the vessel, well, then you're going to have an inner row of boats on this side of these boats, and they were concerned that that inner row of boats was going to take up too much deck space, especially for the first class. Can you imagine? Concern for that. And I shall tell you a bit more about that. That really was heartbreaking that I learned. So he's working to try to get more lifeboats, but from what I understand, they're trying to knock it down much further. They feel that for vessels this size, they feel that the lifeboats would only be needed to ferry passengers from one vessel to the next should there be an accident or a collision. They would just ferry the passengers, and there would be no hurry, so you can take your time. So in the end, I recall the evenings my husband would come home, and I would see him in his study. And all the gentlemen here that work at the yard know of what I speak. Ladies, I'm sure you've noticed how your husbands come home. Mr. O'Brien, I've seen you at our home many times speaking to Mr. Andrews about your disappointment in the decisions being made there at the yard, just overruling him completely. Well, I remember seeing him sitting at his desk. He's running his hands through his hair. And I felt so badly for him. And when I went up to him and I touched him, and he said, "Nellie," and he reached over and put his hand on my shoulder. He said, I'm concerned. With a vessel this size, they're not listening to what I'm saying. He said, for 3,200 people, he says, I feel there should be enough seats for everyone on board. We don't know what we're going to run into should there be an accident. Then he was concerned. I remember I mentioned a double hull configuration. Titanic, Olympic, they would be like a lifeboat within themselves. Therefore, should they run aground, run against anything, the water would run up into the sides. Therefore, she would stay afloat till she can accept a tow, or she can limp back to her harbor. Well, my husband has been overruled on that as well. They said they will give him a double bottom, but not a double skin. Lifeboats. And keep this in mind. He tried to work with them, and he asked, well, then 48? And even though they were approved, by one part of the company. The others still overruled him. Soon I will tell you how many boats we were left with. You recall the watertight compartments I spoke of, right? Any gentleman or any lady, raise your hand. What does watertight mean to you? Not going to open. Would you agree that that means it needs to seal true at all four corners? Very good. And your name?
Rosemary.
Rosemary. Thank you, dear. It's very nice to have you here. Is it your husband that works at the yard as well? You're very knowledgeable.
I came alone.
You came alone. He doesn't know you're here, right? Oh, quite the rebel. I love it. I love it. You don't have to tell him every time you're out. But she's true. What she said is true. It has to seal tight, all four corners. But they've told my husband that no, the watertight compartments, and they're still calling on that, they will only go high as E deck. And they'll be open at the top. Open at the top. And why? Well, they are concerned about impeding on the first class amenities, that the rooms may be too much taken up because of going higher with watertight bulkheads. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen? The watertight bulkheads will be open at the top, going as high as E deck, but not sealing true. So if you can imagine an ice cube tray and tilting it, water just spills from one to the next, to the next, to the next. So there's these ladders where the men, Mr. O'Brien is in there all the time, I know, and he goes in and out and checking those bulkheads. They're open at the top, the men can crawl over, do their work, but should anything happen, they are open. There's nothing to seal that off true. My daughter's been growing. She is now 17 months of age. Recently, my husband and I had a bit of a falling out. I chose, as I had said, because I had been locked up quite some time while she was first born. I had wished to go see my friend, Lizzie Craig, and my family in Paterson, New Jersey. Lizzie Craig lived in Lee, Massachusetts. And stepping out of character for a moment, if you want to see Lizzie's picture here and a letter, a postcard that Mrs. Andrews wrote to Lizzie, it's right there. So I wanted to go and visit my friend. I wanted some time away. Well, my husband said that if I was going to travel, I had to take baby with me. Now, what kind of travel is that? What kind of relaxation is that when you have to have the baby with you, ladies in tow? He says, with her nurse, Lizzie Scott, will be with you. I don't want anyone coming with me. So he would not agree to it. So when he was about to leave on one of the Olympics voyages, since he was giving me such an argument, I left, leaving baby with mother. So if he wanted to see his daughter, he would have to go see his most favorite person in the whole wide world, my mother, for putting me through that issue. And I came over on Lusitania, rival liner to the Olympic class sliders. Oh, yes, he was very, very happy with me when he found out what I did. And I arrived in New York, and then I went to Paterson, New Jersey, where I saw the family. And then I came to see Lizzie and her new husband here in Lee, Massachusetts. And we stayed at the Morgan House. Oh, we had wonderful, wonderful rooms there. And her and I were able to catch up on all those old times. Her husband was quite busy working, so her and I were able to catch up. And Lee, Massachusetts, oh, it's such a quaint, beautiful town. Oh, it reminds me so much of when I was growing up. And I loved it. I loved being there. And I didn't want to leave, but of course, we all have to go back home at some point. So honest and true, I know many people don't talk of it, but my husband and I are actually separated for 2 months during that time period. A lot of arguing, not say arguing or not quite agreeing on the who should raise baby, who should be home, doing all the different, how many hours I should be there. I told you I'm a rebel and I'm always doing other things. I like to travel too. You can't bring baby with for all that. So we had a few discrepancies, a few arguments, but in the end, we came back home in August of 1911. He came back from the Olympic. He was back and forth with voyages, and I came back from New Jersey. And there we said we were going to be a family and make a true go of it. Well, our uncle, William James Peary, is set to sail on Titanic. She'll be sailing soon. She's been pushed back a bit because, as you know, Mr. O'Brien, the Olympic came back because she dropped a propeller blade. That propeller, I think I need more water, and I promise you it's not wine. It really isn't. Although I wouldn't argue if it was. But it had dropped a propeller blade, so therefore we had to move. Olympic is over here waiting to get in. Well, I mean, let me see. I have to look very well. Oh, no, I'm correct. This is Olympic, and she's waiting to get in. So they had to swap the ships. Titanic was almost finished, but they had to swap the ship so the propeller blade could be repaired. So they dropped the propeller blade. It had to be done. So Titanic's been pushed back now, and she will be sailing April 10th. My birthday. Yep, she'll be sailing April 10th. So I know, and it's very hard to tell these two apart. There was an enclosed promenade on the frontal enclosed promenade on Titanic, and that and just a bit in her stern with one of her poles makes her just a tad bit longer than Olympic. Otherwise, they were identical. You could not tell them apart. Well, we get notice that Uncle is very sick, and he cannot travel. Now, Tommy is very, by the way, I call him Tommy, wondering, and all the gentlemen at the yard, his good friends, are allowed to call him Tommy. So if anybody you hear him talking about Tommy, and if you read anything about him, it's always referred to as Tommy. So as we were getting, we were starting to get ready for the voyage, we found out that Uncle Perry is quite sick. He has pneumonia, and he will not be able to take the voyage. We also had noticed that J.P. Morgan will not be traveling on Titanic's maiden voyage either. He had something that happened to come up as well. So my husband enjoyed all the trips on the Olympic, but gentlemen, I'm sure you've seen him wandering about the yard. He's been hobbling quite a bit. Well, he has varicose veins, and it's a terrible problem for him. It's quite painful. And he uses your cane that you all gave him. Yes, indeed. All the men at the yard, ladies, I don't know if you're aware of that, some of your husband's wages, if you notice they were a little short, they all pitched in and gave my husband a walking stick because of his painful legs. So Tommy was not truly wishing to go on voyage again anytime soon because of his painful legs. But of course, being the good worker and for his uncle, he will be taking the maiden voyage of Titanic. And with him is his friend, Mr. Ismay, will be on board. And with them will be a group of men called the Guarantee Group. And the Guarantee Group will be there, a select group of men from the yard, to ensure that everything is running efficiently on these vessels. And they were taking notes. You will see my husband's notes in the case there. And he made notes, and the other gentleman made notes of all the things that need to be fixed. He went around. Some of the ladies asked that there be more coat hooks in the staterooms. Some of the ladies asked for more enclosed areas on the promenade because their dresses were getting hit with the sea spray. Different color of pebble on the walkways. So they're writing everything down, everything they had to address, and taking care of that. Well, I remember the morning that he left. Initially, they were supposed to have sea trials, and it was delayed because of the weather. And I watched him leave from our front door, early morning hours, of course, for the yard. And I watched as long as I could see until I could not see the cab any longer, taking him with the horse. And I waited to hear information about Titanic while he'd been on the voyage. Some of the words that I received and some of the telegrams I received, the team has had a very easy time of it as the ship has been performing splendidly. We are expecting a smooth and uneventful crossing. I will telegraph you upon my arrival in New York. Ever your loving Tommy. So things were going very well with the ship. And then nothing. I wasn't receiving, because each port of call he had, he was sending me a telegram. Then there wasn't anything. And then, of course, I recall the news coming in. The Titanic had an accident. Now, at first they were saying to everyone back home that she would have been being towed. We were told she's being towed. We're telling that she's coming in on her own power. So, of course, all of us back home were waiting. Time went by, and then finally word came through from the Marconi officers on board Titanic. Harold Bride was putting out the distress signal. They had to send out the first call, SOS and CQD. Now, SOS came out in 1908. Wasn't that new of a signal, but that is the signal they kept putting out. SOS, CQD. They were trying to get somebody to come to the ship. Titanic had collided with an iceberg. 11:40 p.m., April 14th, 1912. I come to find that it was a moonless night. There was no moon, so therefore you could not see any bergs, any water lapping at any bergs in the water. And there was a haze because of the weather created at night. So therefore it brought the horizon up. And they were not able to see, the lookouts could not see anything coming. In fact, we later found a lot of the binoculars were left behind in Southampton. And some of the cases were locked. They had no access to some of those cases. They saw the iceberg very close to the ship. It was very, very, very late, very close. Captain Smith had already retired to bed for some time. So First Officer Murdoch, William Murdoch, he saw when they rung the thing, they said, "Ring, ring, ring. Yes, what do you see?" "Iceberg, right ahead." So he said, "Hard to starboard." So Frederick Fleet started hitting her hard to starboard. What they were going to do was, this is the iceberg, and this is the ship. They're going to port round it. So what they were going to do, and here's the berg, they thought they could miss that berg, and what they were trying to do is port around like that. But on the starboard side, which is the other side, pretend this is the starboard side, here's your bow, here's the starboard side, she collided with the berg. They're ripping open the seams of the rivets. Now, with us limited on time, I don't have too much time to tell you about the slag in the rivets. But the rivets, the steel, Titanic was built with the best of the steel that was available at that time. And all the plates were riveted one to each other. In fact, it took 5 men to rivet one plate, to rivet one hole. You had the heater man, you had the catcher, you had the holder up, to catch the catcher boy. You would have a couple guys there hitting it from each side until that rivet was all the way and it wasn't hot any longer. But when it hit that on the side of the starboard, you remember, what did my husband want? He wanted a double skin. It was not there. So it unbuckled those plates. And then what happened? She started filling with water. Starboard side. And as the water started coming in, her bow went under, and it kept going back and back. You remember there was open compartments, right? The open compartments. Over and over. We have on board 2,208 souls. Not full capacity, but yet we have, are we ready? Remember, my husband wanted 64 lifeboats, and then they said 48. Ready. 16 lifeboats and 4 emergency collapsibles. That's it. Not enough for half on board. We have 2,208 souls on board. Not enough for all on board. So what I've come to find is, gentlemen, there is no law of the sea that says you must give up your seat in a lifeboat for women and children. It was what you did. It was just something that was a gentlemanly agreement to do. So as many women and children that could be put into the lifeboats were put in. Many of the men were left on the sinking decks. In a short moment, we are going to sing Near My God to Thee in remembrance of all the victims, not only that were left on Titanic, but victims as myself, whose husband never came home, us at home, that our family never came back to us. We're going to sing that in remembrance of all these people and all these victims. So as the band kept playing, they kept playing as long as they could. And the ship kept going under and under. The light's still on. Remember I told you about the guarantee group? They kept her lights on, burning under the water even, until they just couldn't keep them on any longer. Ladies, if you were on board and you had children with you, if you had a boy and he was 10 years of age or older, he was denied a seat in a lifeboat. Why? Because he was considered a man at that age. And so even the boys, 10 years of age and older, stepped aside with their fathers, their uncles. Titanic hit the iceberg at 11:40 p.m. on April 14th, 1912. Once as many lifeboats could get away, all that was on board was the people. There's no more lifeboats. There's no help coming. All the vessels that Harold Bride was tapping out, SOS 2, couldn't get there right away. Cunard vessel Carpathia was the one who came. But she didn't arrive on the scene till 4:40, almost 5 o'clock in the morning. And SOS is, and then 3, and then 3. Dot, 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 dot. He kept that going until he completely ran out of power due to the water. On April 15th, 1912, at 2:20 a.m., Titanic took her final plunge with over 1,500 people still on board. People in the boats could hear the crying. Many in the boats couldn't go back. Their boats were filled. And some of the boats, sadly, they were too afraid to go back. They're afraid their boat would be swamped. But my husband, many came up to him and they said, Mr. Andrews, won't you have a try for it? And from what I know, and I'm proud of him, he said, no. He said, I'm going to try to get as many people into lifeboats as possible. The last place my husband was seen was in the first class smoking room, staring at a painting of Plymouth Harbor. That was the last place he was seen. Many say that he was almost into tears because everything that he worked for and all the safety precautions that he tried for were denied. And everything that he tried for, everything he worked so hard for, was falling to pieces with the people around him. And of course, he knew that he would never see me and Elba again. Water temperature was below freezing. And we all know seawater does not freeze because of the salt. Air temperature was 32 degrees and lower. Before we move on to the music, I want you to remember this. You know how cold it's been lately. Gentlemen, for a strong gentleman as yourself, any one of you men, about 20-25 minutes in the water. And then what happens is you just start getting very tired and you fall asleep. But before you fall asleep, it's like 1,000 knives going through your body. Ladies, you had about 10 to 15 minutes in the water if you were not rescued before you went to sleep after feeling that pain. Our children, 3 to 5 minutes. The sad thing was when the Carpathia came through to pick up passengers, the sad part of it is many of you gentlemen and you ladies were still alive in the water, but you see once hypothermia takes over, you can hear what's going on. It's muffled, but you can hear, you can see, but you don't have the strength to raise your arm to say, I'm here. So the only way they were able to let anyone know if anyone was surviving, any officers, anybody in the water, was these whistles. May I blow this whistle? This is one of the officers' whistles. And that would carry over the water. Is there any questions before we have our music?
Is it correct that there was pressure on the captain to go faster?
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, there was. There was. J. Bruce Ismay. I wish I had, Michelle, next time we'll have to do like 2 hours because I'm like, you can't shut me up. Joe knows that. Joe knows. I could, blah, 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 blah. That is correct. He had pressure from the mercantile, the merchant mercantile marine. He had trouble. He had pressure from the White Star Line. They want him to. They were trying to beat the Olympic in, believe it or not. Olympic was one of the vessels that received the SOS. They couldn't believe it. Say, hey, old man, we can't believe this is you. But that is true. Captain Smith was being pushed by Ismay. He wanted to beat the Olympic in to make a record with Titanic. That is
the owner?
Ismay actually worked for, which I didn't have time to get in. There was a group called the Mercantile Marine, and J.P. Morgan was actually running it, along with White Star Line, and he was working for them. And so the British Board of Trade. He was their mouthpiece. Same thing with the lifeboats. He pushed to make sure those lifeboats didn't happen.
Is your husband the designer of the ship?
Thomas Andrews, yes. Thomas Andrews Jr., right here. And I'm sorry if I wasn't clear about that. Our wedding things are in the cabinet there, our wedding picture. The actual first book that was made only a month after he passed away by Shan Bullock. It's right in there. Our wedding gift, our platter, many things in the cabinet there. You actually have pieces from the RMS Olympic here. That's in the first cabinet from when she was taken apart. Everything in Olympic, if you ever want to know, and I have a wonderful couple here. You remind me of Mr. and Mrs. Strauss. They were one of the couples on board that she refused to leave his side, and he said, I will not go before the other men. So you stepped back and you stayed, and then you said, we spent our lives together. Where you go, I go. So you remind me of the Strausses, who owned Macy's department store in New York City. By the way, they were both lost on Titanic, but they were saying they may do some traveling to London. the White Swan Hotel. You have to go there because the beautiful interiors of the Olympic are there, and they are identical to Titanic. You will see molding over there on that case that was aboard the lifts, or above the lifts.
Is the James Cameron movie pretty accurate?
What I tell everybody is the movie is great. What you see going around Jack and Rose is real, but Jack and Rose are not.
Right.
She was loosely based on a woman in third class. She was loosely based on a woman in third class. But everything you see going on around them is true. My great uncle, well, you'll see his picture is in Michelle's case in the library there. William James Lester, he lost his life. All the men, if you were traveling and you didn't have any, you were traveling by yourselves, he was coming to Pontiac, Michigan to get work. And then he was going to go to the B&O Railroad to work. Any of the men that were single and you were traveling by yourselves, like Jack Dawson, you were up in the bow. So my uncle was lost immediately because he was on the starboard side in the bow where the iceberg collided. So, is there any question?
How many people in third class survived?
I don't have an exact number. Most of the children did not. Only one first class child passed away. I don't want to give you an inaccurate number, but not many.
Because they couldn't get up.
No, that's the problem. Because the gates, and Michelle, it's okay. We'll start the sing in a minute. The gates, just quickly, I know in the movies you see all these gates locked, right? There's a main road that runs to the ship. Okay? Main road that runs to this vessel. It's called Scotland Road. You saw it in the movie James Cameron, or all the passengers are walking. Remember at the end, Jack and Rose were trying to get down to that corridor. And at the end, and in the stern, and in the here, there are, or right about here, I'm sorry, there's called the Bostwick gates. And those are the only gates that seal true from top to bottom. The other gates that are between the decks, or between the different classes, you saw this, I believe, in Clifton Webb's movie. I think you can see this too. They're only as high as this. But it was a different time, and it would say first class only, second class only. We obeyed. There was no problem obeying rules back then. Nobody went, they didn't have to worry about anyone going into the wrong thing. At the end, when people were panicking, that's a different story. But in truth, they were able to move about the ship, and not everywhere were they locked. So the Bostwick gates were sealed. Up here, right about in here, and right about in the back here. So those were sealed true, and you couldn't get up and out of those. But then again, if the single men were in the bow, the families were, I believe the families were in the center, and the single women were in the back. If you're not someone that works in marine, or someone that doesn't work on the seas, how are you going to know how to navigate to get yourself up and out of that? Not everything was locked, but how do you know where to go? And the men in the bow, there was nothing saying go here or go here. If you didn't work on the vessel, you better hope you could follow somebody up, otherwise you wouldn't know how to get out. Any other questions? Yes, ma'am.
They never did get that trial run, did they?
The
trial run?
No, they did not. They were supposed to have a lifeboat drill. And that means lifeboat drill where everybody knows where to report. They did not have that. They had 1 or 2 lifeboats lowered with a couple of the stewards, and that was it. And then, she's working. Bring her back up.
They didn't fill the lifeboats when they...
No, they did not.
When the lifeboats went down with all the people anyway, right?
That's correct. And it wasn't completely the fault of any of the crew that the boats weren't filled to full capacity. ladies, if you have this vessel behind you and it's been deemed unsinkable in the press and the lights are on, it's warm and the music is playing. Remember the music played till the end? Are you going to go on that, or are you going to get in this little boat, okay? No lights, nothing. You look over the side, it's just dark, it's cold, it's freezing, and there's no guarantee you're going to be found. There's no guarantee. It was a hard decision to make. So in the beginning, they really couldn't get a lot of the people into the boats. In fact, gentlemen, any of the gentlemen that initially jumped into a boat, it was actually considered an act of heroism because you were getting all the other people, getting these ladies to move, get them into the boats. They didn't want to leave that warm security of the vessel. And you got to remember, before Titanic sailed, again, like I said, Michelle, I can be here for 3 hours. Joe knows I don't stop. They deemed her unsinkable in the papers, but Harlan and Wolff never said that. They said practically, but no vessel is unsinkable. Not even if she doesn't leave the dock, because the Eastland in Chicago overturned at the dock. So no vessel is unsinkable. Yes.
One more question, and then we'll get it. Did you ever get to meet Molly Brown when she eventually did get to New York City?
No, I did not. I did not. But later, Mrs. Andrews, it's okay for me to step out of character now. Thank you for having me back. Denise welcomes you. But yes, Helen did get a chance to meet many of the ladies. So many people wrote to her. So many people came to see her. Later on, she was able to meet everybody. And because she came over, she came over a lot because of her family. She traveled everywhere, and she finally did meet her. Yes, she did. And the reason Molly Brown got the unsinkable Molly Brown is because she was the one getting everybody in those boats, keeping those morale up. Let's go. Come on. You need rowers. Women can row too, keeping everybody going. So I hope it's never enough time with you. I could be here. I wish I could keep you here all night. To me, I feel like I'm too condensed, but I hope I brought somewhat of Mrs. Andrews' story forward for you. And if I will give you the old-time Edwardian bow to each group of people.
Can I get a sheet? Can I get one of them?
Of course. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. and Mrs. Strauss, thank you for your service. My ladies. I'm sorry I couldn't tell you more. There's so much to the story. Michelle's going to have stuff here a while, so I'll tell you what. Ready, Michelle, in a minute. Just let me grab my sheet. So take your time to come in and see things. All the cases will be here, and you're looking at actual. I mean, there's platters from Mr. and Mrs. Andrews, wood from Olympic, White Star Line items, and sometime I'm going to have to tell you about the baker, because the baker survived the sinking because he drank all this brandy, and it was. Can I quickly say this? Okay, the baker. Charles Jogan, right over there. You know what? There was a great story, and you got to read it sometime. Archibald Gracie wrote the book. Okay, Charles Jogan. All right, when he kept throwing like deck chairs into the water, and he kept sneaking back to his room, and he'd taken the brandy, and then when he couldn't get back to his room anymore, then he went to the next level where he knew where the brandy was. And he's over there throwing, and then he'd throw more deck chairs in. So by the time, long story short, when Titanic went down, he rode her down, never got his hair wet, stepped off her like an elevator. But they were holding him on the side of the lifeboat because there was no room for him, okay? Until somebody, sad to say this, passed away, and they would let that person over, and then they pull whoever is still alive up on And so all these men were doing this on an overturned lifeboat. And he brought one of them up, and they all complained that they could smell the spirits on him. They're all freezing, but they could smell the spirits. And in 1958, a night to remember, he pulls them up and he goes, "Ugh." He goes, "Excuse me, sir, the cold." But everybody could smell it. But a true story, though. So there's a bakery silver in that White Star Line case there. He used to bring that bread to Mr. Andrews every day on Titanic. So now you have condensed.
Yes.
Okay. He never told thee, even though it be a cross that raiseth thee, still all my song shall be. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. Oh, like the wanderer, the sun gone down, darkness be over me, my rest a stone. Yet in my dreams I'd be nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. There let the way appear, steps unto heaven. Oh, that thou sendest me in mercy given.
It's just a portion. I'd like to do more at CTSB. I've got twice as many as we see here.
To beckon me, nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer, my God, to thee. Nearer to thee. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
All right, I'm leaving your water next to your box.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Mrs. Taylor Andrews.
Thomas Andrews.
Thomas Andrews.
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas Andrews.
Thomas Andrews Jr. This is Thomas Andrews.
This is Thomas Andrews. I'm gonna just write that so. Joe, I have to go make you a sheet. I'm gonna say.
I haven't seen you, Joe, in a long time.
Yeah. Well, Christmas we took that week off.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Riley Barber Andrews. That's our full name.
We keep running into each other all over the place today.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but
Look at that.
And I was going out, doing pretty good business. I'm gonna see if I have time to use the restroom. You're able to go. All right, I'm able to go, all right.
Thank you.
Michelle, do I have time to use?
Sure, plenty of time.
Yeah, plenty
Do
of
I
time.
have time?
Yes.
Yep, you're the show.
Okay.
Don't start without you.
And Joe, those are, that's the original first book. Those are his notes, and that's a wedding platter.
Oh wow.
They're real pieces.
Silver, right?
Yep, they're real pieces.
Wow. Are these yours now?
Yes,
Yeah.
all that's
well,
mine.
one picture I'm gonna have to delete because my finger got in the way, so I'm gonna have to delete that one.
Okay, sir.
Oh, thank you.
See, there's the one I gotta delete.
Yeah, it was very good. I mean,
Well, you gotta be careful trying to get it through in some places.
Yeah.
Mud goes all over.
Oh, yeah.
Well, see, you got another one that was right out of
Yeah. That screen water finds out.